And to all of you, it is good to see you this morning. Everybody doing well? On this high, holy day, the opening day of baseball season? How many of you got tickets? Okay, I will not preach real long today. I'll get you there for the first pitch. It's important stuff. It is so good to be together. Let me thank you for, many of you have called or asked or checked in on me with all these wonderful throat-killing allergies. I want to thank you for your prayers for me keep praying. Those oak trees are still killing me, so we're going to survive as we get through that. But we are grateful for our time together and grateful as well. It's good to look out and see a friend of mine here, Haley Grossman. Haley, thank you for being with us this morning. Haley is part of the ministry of FAST, Faith and Action Stronger Together, which is a wonderful group of folks promoting social justice through faith communities, and an important part of our work together. And we're grateful for your presence here with us today. Let me say a quick word or two before we fall into our sermon this morning. One is to say to you, just to repeat, take advantage of these. We have sent out several thousands of these to folks within our area, invitations to be with us on Easter Sunday, with the idea that love has won. You begin to think about the battles in this world that are being raged on so many different levels, to understand that there is victory, and that victory is found in the love of God. And we're excited about sharing that with folks and sharing it with each other, particularly on Easter Sunday morning. Love wins. That's good news, and we need to know that. So I encourage you to take these that are in there and just share them with somebody. The suggestion earlier, give them to your neighbors on either side. That's a good thing to do. Somebody you know that may be invited, may be open to an invitation to come to be a part of that great day and to do that. That's a great thing. But also, as Pastor Randy was speaking earlier about the small groups, it really is important for our community. We're not designed to do faith in isolation or even to do it an hour at a time on a Sunday morning. So we want to look at how we can best roll our folks all into groups together to reach out to new people and to make that deeper, richer connection. And that is really, really important to us. So I pray that you'll be open to that in the days ahead. Grab your Bibles, if you would. Look with me to Matthew, the 5th chapter. I'm going to growl our way through again with the Beatitudes. We are now 7 weeks into the Beatitudes. Can you believe that? We're almost there. We're near the finish line. And but I'd like to go back as we have each Sunday and just hear those again. Those wonderful teachings of Jesus that says this is the road to blessedness. This is the road to favor. This is the road to happiness. And it's not what the world tells you it is. It's a whole different agenda. So hear these, beginning with verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Can't say that enough. That is both a promise and an instruction. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's an interesting take on the teachings that Jesus gives us here. I want you to notice that it's cut in half. The first 4 of the Beatitudes are about the condition where God finds us. And it's the idea of him coming to us in our brokenness, in our humanness, in our weakness, and there he brings blessing to us. And it's, pardon me, it's the condition of being poor in spirit, but as we hear over in Luke, it's also just the poor, of mourning, that of grieving and hurting and being in touch with the reality of our losses. Meekness, where we are teachable, but in a sense of we're not proud, we're not haughty. And hungering and thirsting for all the right things. It's wonderful to me to know that God comes and meets us right where we are, that we don't have to be perfect, we don't have to have it all together. We don't have to have life, the world in a jug and a stopper in our hand to be able to say, okay, God, you can now deal with me. He says, I want to come to you just like you are. Because at one time or another, we have all dealt with the fact that our resources have not been sufficient to meet our needs. Have you been there? Some of you may say, are you there right now? Chances are most of us can say, absolutely. Have you ever been hurt? Experienced loss, grief? Yes. Been hungry? Been thirsty? Felt weak? The first part of the Beatitudes, Jesus is saying, don't let that fool you, because it is in those conditions that I come and embrace you and you can encounter me. And there we find that condition that leads to blessedness. And then in the second half, we find not just the condition, but we find a relationship, where it begins to speak about how we encounter others. The first four about how God encounters us. Then we move to the next four, how we encounter others, where he said it's blessed for us to be merciful. Now that flies against the grain of a world where frankly it's more in vogue to be merciless than it is to be merciful. To be pure-hearted, to have the right motives towards how we encounter other people. To be peacemakers and to respond to the folks who persecute us. The second half of the Beatitudes turns, and it really does come back to us. It says, how are you going to relate to other people? How are you going to do that in a way where you are being all the things that Christ would have us to be, to have those blessings? As this morning we're going to focus on the seventh of these, and that is the word, blessed are the peacemakers. We find that in verse 9. Again, it's the principle and the promise that are tied together. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. The idea that trying to seek out peace in our life and being an agent of that is an important prerequisite to how we feel about ourselves. Now, roll with me on that for a minute. Before we get all global, we're going to get there in a minute, let's just bring it all back down to where you and I live. Can we all be honest about the fact that sometimes we're not that interested? Are you right? Okay, how many of you guys are like me and that it is impossible to be peaceable before 7 o'clock in the morning? You just kind of wake up with that predisposition. You're just not there. I saw a coffee cup that I've got to get it. It's a clear cup that at the very top it says, hush. And then about a third of the way down it says, not yet. Then about a quarter of the way from the bottom it says, almost. And then at the very bottom it says, you may speak now. You kind of need that sometimes to have that peaceable spirit. We were walking through TJ Maxx or Home Goods, one of those wonderful places that really good sweet husbands follow their wives around in. And we were doing that as we're walking through and we go over there. I see this sign on the wall and I just pointed at it and it said, I'm sorry for what I said before coffee. And Lisa looked at me like, don't matter. It's good. Yeah, it's there. But you know, there are times in our life where we aren't always as peaceable as we want to be. For some of us, that is a temporary condition, kind of what's happening in and around us. But for some folks, it's a permanent condition. It is that idea of being combative, abrasive. You can fill in the blanks with a lot of words there. Anything but peaceable. And Jesus speaks into that and says, you know, if you really want to be happy in this world, take seriously the idea of making peace. Now, I love that because what is the operative word here? The peace what? Blessed are the peacemakers. See, that infers to me that you don't stumble into peace. That has to be something that you make. You make it in relationship with other people. You go out of your way to try to make it happen. You take responsibility for what you bring to that table, and it just doesn't happen just by stumbling into it. But yet we find that we wish it would work that way, but it doesn't. And we wonder why we're not as happy and we're not as blessed as we want to be. And maybe it comes down to that predisposition to be spiritually, peaceably minded. What a call that is for us. When I think of peaceful people in this world, one of those that comes to my mind is Jimmy Carter. During the week before I came to be your pastor last year, we went down to Plains and we stood in line at 6 in the morning to get in to hear him teach Sunday school. And it was a wonderful experience to get to do that. But my mind went back to 2 years before. My senior year in high school was 1978. It was the year of the Camp David peace agreement. Do y'all remember that? The agreement between Egypt, Anwar Sadat, and Israel, Menachem Begin, and to take two nations, two people who had been at enmity with one another, to find the common ground, to come and to make some peace. So here's a Christian standing between a Muslim and standing between a Jew and holding together. And at the end of it, there was said of President Carter, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Blessed are those who go out of their way to make peace. I applaud that in him, and we've seen that in his life as he has lived that out. But I would suggest to you this morning that a prerequisite for making peace is to be at peace, to value peace. Because my experience is people who are not at peace have a hard time being peaceable with other folks. And we wonder about the things in life as we begin to come through and come to realize that we're not always at peace with God. Sometimes we're separated from Him because of our actions, because of our attitudes, because of our history, unconfessed sins. We're not always there. We're not always at peace with ourselves. Think about that this morning. We're not always at peace with our past. We all have a history. We all have things that we have done or have been done to us that we carry with us as a reminder, a heavy load of the stones of our stumbling, or perhaps the stones of others stumbling that has hurt us. To be at peace with our past, or to perhaps be in peace with our present circumstances. You know, the ways like we'd like it to be. I can guarantee you there's somebody in the week, some of us, that you've heard news. There are things going on right now that you're not happy about, you're concerned about. You find yourself in a situation, you go, I really wish I wasn't here right now. I'm hurting for that. There's been a bad news. There's been insecurity at the job. There's been something that's going on. There's some circumstance, and I'm just not at peace with it. And then to be at peace with others is another part of that picture. How in the world do we get to the point where we can be peaceable? Because we say, I'm at peace with God, I'm at peace with myself, I've made peace with my past, I'm at peace with my circumstances, whatever they are, and I'm reaching beyond myself to be at peace with other people. That's not always as easy as it seems. Take a look at Romans, the 12th chapter, verse 18, where it says this: if it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Okay, that's a great verse. It tells me some things. It tells me, one, that we are predisposed not to be at peace, that we have to take that effort and that initiative to do that. Am I right? Okay. But take a look also in that verse. Notice this. It says, when it is possible and as far as it depends on you. Sometimes it's not possible because of other folks. There's some people that just are not going to live at peace with you. Y'all know that? Y'all can probably picture those people, okay? The illustration or the metaphor that I've carried through the years is I've learned with folks like that, I can't take the wind out of their sails, but I can take my sail out of their wind. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you just have to say, I can't take the wind out of their sails. I'll take my sail out of their wind. I'm just not going to keep going at this thing and just be abrasive and be hard and to just keep that going. I'm just going to step back from that. But more times than not, we do have the capability of influence the peaceable nature of our relationships with other people. And the Bible is clear to us. As much as it is possible, and as far as it depends on you and on me, we are called to live at peace with the people that we like. Right? You know what that says? No, the people I agree with. The people who vote like me. The people who are nice to me. No, what does it say? What's the word? What's the word? Do y'all really believe that? Help me out here, folks. How come we live in a world where being nice to everyone is just seen as the most radical thing in the world? Civility is dead. Y'all know that? You know, it's recreational to be combative and abrasive and dismissive and abusive. And it's just not healthy. It's just not right. And you don't have to be all that smart to know that. You just go back to the very basics. The Bible tells us. We're not wired up to be that way. You know, I just have this vision in my mind. I shared this a little bit last week. That when Jesus got through doing this, he wanders back out into the crowd. And somebody wanders over to him and says, Jesus, you hadn't been here very long. You don't know just how things really are. I mean, this peaceable stuff is fine. But if you're going to get ahead in this world, you better be willing to take people on head on. And you want to win every encounter. And you want to be right. And sometimes you got to take some people down in order to do that. And what you're teaching here just doesn't really fit with how we live. And Jesus is saying, that's kind of my point. And he said that 2,000 years ago, and he says it today. He says it today. In Isaiah, the 6th chapter, we hear the promise of the coming of Christ. It tells us that among the many things that he will be for us is he will be the Prince of Peace. Now, I want you to roll with me this morning for just a little bit over to Philippians, the 4th chapter. The reason I go there this morning is it's one of the great chapters of the New Testament. but it's also one that has an inordinate focus on the promise of peace in our hearts, so that somehow as we experience peace, we can live out of that peace and be a distributor, a seeker, a maker of that kind of peace. And there are three great promises in that text. The first one is in verse 7. Now, as you hear these promises, I want you to imagine yourself living in this current reality, okay? As you hear this, soak it in as a promise to you. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Okay? Marinate in that for just a minute. Hang in there with me. The peace of God will guard your heart and guard your mind. His very nature. Now let's go to the next promise. And the God of peace will be with you. Isn't that the amazing thing? That the God of the universe, the one who stepped out onto the stage of nothingness and brought everything there is into existence, the God of all the ages, the God of all the universe, God of all people, of all times, knows you and me personally, and he will be with us. What an amazing thing. That he will live in us and his peace will live in us in all of these circumstances. That when we go back to how do we deal with our relationship with God, with ourselves, with our past, with our circumstances, and with others, God of peace says, you just hang in there with me because I'm going to be inside of you. What a promise. Okay? Now here's the third promise in Philippians, the 4th chapter. You will be able to do all things through Christ who gives you strength. Now, you've heard me say this before. This is my favorite and least favorite verse in the New Testament. I love it because what a great promise. I think it has become unduly popular in our narcissistic culture because the first word of this verse is I, and the last one is me. And most folks want to appropriate this verse for selfishness. But what a great verse it is to grab hold of and say, wow, I can do all things, including making peace in the world around me and in my life. But you've heard me say this before. These are the promises. In the Bible, thousands of times over, what always precedes the promises? Principles precede promises. Say that with me. Principles precede promises. Say it one more time. Principles precede promises. If you want to live the promises, you've got to live out the principles. Okay? So let's go back into these verses and take a look at the principle that lives before the promise. The first one says this. This has to do with our basic spiritual position, our orientation. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all, for the Lord is near. Now, that is the one that precedes the idea that the God of peace will be with you. But it's back up for that. Let's go to the next one. There you go, good. Finally, brothers, back to 6, I'm sorry. That's what happens when I start looking at the screen over here. But hearing that wonderful, it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Now, understand that if we're going to live the promise, we need to live a life that is marked by rejoicing, by gentleness, a gentleness that is evident to all. That means that you're consistent in your living. That is marked by a lack of anxiety and fear because of our trust. Because we can do that because we can present our requests to God with a spirit of thanksgiving. And that paves the way for the living of that kind of peace. See, folks, the reason we don't always have the peace is we're not living that which provides for that. We're not living the principle that brings us to the promise. Okay, let's move to the next set of those. Verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received from me or seen in me, put it into practice. Again, the road to peace. Understanding our heart. And that nature of us of saying that we truly want to live out that which God has as the very best for us. Do we spend time valuing what is true, what is noble, what is right, what is pure, what is lovely, what is admirable, what is excellent, what is praiseworthy? And then lastly, as we think about the precursor to I can do all things, Paul says this, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. And I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, living in plenty or living in want. He's learned the secret, pardon me, folks, of contentment. If we want to be in a position to be people of peace, we need to back up to the prerequisites for peace. Those prerequisites that speak about our basic spiritual condition of joy and gentleness and trust, our living out of the virtues of our life and faith about what is good and true and noble and right, and then learning to be content. It is the first day of baseball season, right? So it's altogether right that I should close with a word from that great philosopher and theologian, James Earl Jones. Y'all remember Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. Go the distance. There's that great scene where he comes at the end and he's saying, they're going to come. They're going to pull in here. They're going to do all of this. They will come, Ray. It says, for they'll come for reasons they can't even fathom. And they'll pass over the money and they'll walk out to the bleachers and they'll sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon and they'll find they've reserved seats somewhere along the baselines where they sit. And it is as if they have dipped themselves in magic waters. It says they'll come because it's money they have and it's peace they lack. Money they have, it's peace they lack. That's a picture of the world. It's a picture of our life. We have a lot of things, but we want more peace. And this morning, let's hear the word of the Prince of Peace that calls us back to that. Blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who live that out by our spiritual orientation, by our basic position, by the things that we focus on, by our ability to be content, to somehow value being at peace. It's a road to blessedness. It's a road we all need to walk. Let's join together in prayer. Father, as we come to you this morning, we come thanking you for your love. We come thanking you for the gift of peace. Lord, your peace you give to us, not as the world gives, but Lord, you give it to us, not just so we can marinate in it, but Father, also so we can share it. And in a world that is broken and disjointed, so we can make it. Help us to take that seriously. Lord, we do love you. We thank you for your love for us. And we pray all of these things in the strong, strong name of the one of many names, but one of which is Prince of Peace. Amen. We're going to stand together and sing together. It is well with my soul. And as we begin to think about that in our life. If there's a way that God would have you to respond this morning, would you do it? As we stand together and as we sing.